This Choircast broadcast is brought to you by Mornings with Schleiermacher. Conservative devotionals are rule-oriented, they focus on a Bible verse a day, and they're often made of the opinions of a megachurch pastor. How is Mornings different? It's idea-oriented. It focuses on experiencing God every day and contains insight from the father of modern theology. Mornings is a progressive devotional made by progressives for progressives. Check out Mornings with Schleiermacher today.
Western Christianity has spent the last 2,000 years telling everyone they're separated from God.
This is Not Church with John and Nat Turney and Bethany Shea.
Hola y bienvenidos al podcast de Nathaniel and John. ¿Cómo están ustedes? Estamos bien, gracias. Hey, it's pretty good. I can do my...
People are definitely signing off and they're like, oh no, I clicked on the wrong one.
Este podcast es lo más perfecto del mundo, con las noticias, la música y los deportes de hoy. I don't even know why I did that. Sometimes sometimes I gotta roll with it. And sometimes what it is there's that little, you remember the old cartoons where, you know, like the angel and the demon would pop up on each side of the person's, and sometimes I just listen to the wrong one. I'm like, you know what? That sounds like an amazing idea. I should do that.
That was so well done.
All those years of Spanish in college have finally paid off. Hey, Mom, I'm using my degree. Woohoo! She said it would never happen. But hey, we are here today. And if you didn't understand, now, if you understood the first part, then you are in the wrong place, because that's the last bit of Spanish you'll hear. But this is the podcast that we have lovingly holy crap. Bethany, what are you doing? I blame this on you.
Just blame it on me.
I literally was going to say called and named, and I said camed. We have lovingly, since people are just making words up, I guess I will too. We have lovingly called This Is Not Church, because if it was church, you would have left by now. And John and I would be gone, and Bethany would be there saying, come on, man, it's okay. It's not as bad as you thought. But I have been remiss, John and Bethany, in mentioning that if you are going to leave, we only ask that you maybe wait until we pass the plate. Because we don't want you to miss an opportunity to sow into our ministry and also reap your 7, 10, 11. Well, how high are we up to now? Was it 10,000 fold?
I think it's 10,000 fold. Yeah.
I think we're 10,000.
Yes.
We guarantee
blessing.
a 10,000 fold return on your...
As long as
you have enough faith.
As long as you have enough faith.
That's the caveat. Okay, so...
Do they have any sort of free pass to heaven if they pay enough? Anything like that?
Ooh.
Yeah, but it's revocable if John or I or Bethany decide that perhaps we could use, maybe an upgrade in vehicle or home. So just saying, it's pretty well guaranteed. But there are strings. As we try to operate as close to as most of the religious models we have grown up with, which would be, hey, lots and lots of good stuff, but there are strings. Yeah. But we won't tell you about them until much later. So
make sure you're in all the way.
That's right. You got to make sure that you are fully invested and also scared to death. But hey, all of that being said, on a lighter note, we do have an awesome guest with us today. As always, we always have awesome people with us, and today is no exception. So we are going to welcome and introduce you to Christopher John Stubbs. He's the founder of the Wolf Pack and the Men of Sovereignty. He's been a men's empowerment coach since 2006. His expertise in pursuit of greatness as a husband, father, businessman, and thought leader have tremendously blessed his life and the lives of many others. Meet and become your higher self and create an amazing life aligned with that version of you by connecting with him today at www.menofthewolfpack.com. I just felt like that was necessary. I feel like I'm watching the Hangover the first time, and it's like, I used to be a wolf pack of one. Now I have brothers. That's got to, anyway, I'm just firing on random cylinders today. With all that being said, he has a new book out called The Atma Male, an ancient model of success in a postmodern world, and it is out now. So it looks like it's getting some good attention on the Amazon. And without any further ado, welcome to the podcast. How are you, Christopher?
Thank you so much. And thanks for the laughs. I'm doing really well.
We're here for, if nothing else, I want to be able to provide that. There might not be insight. Actually, that's why Bethany's here. Bethany is here for the insight. She's here for the smart questions. John and I are we're here mostly as comic relief and as a foil for all of Bethany's really smart stuff. So, and to contrast and highlight our lovely co-host. See, I went back to lovely.
Yeah, well, let's keep it going. I just, I really missed it last time.
I guess fuck it, I mean, you're lovely. What can I say? John? He's a nice
Not so
dude.
much.
He's a nice guy.
I know.
Right.
I know where I stand.
Oh, we listen, we all have our gifts and our talents and we lean into them heavily. But we stay in our lanes, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
Christopher, if you don't mind, John mentioned before we started recording that a lot of times we like to kick these off asking people about their faith background, their journey a little bit. If you're comfortable with it, maybe you give us a little bit of that background. Let us know where you're coming from.
I'm comfortable with talking about anything and everything at extreme transparency. So I was born in a town called Colorado City, Arizona, which some of you may know, some of you may not. It's probably one of the most publicized, most press around cults in the world or U.S. So I was born there, and by the time I was born, we still lived in the community, but my dad had, created distance between him and the church, and he was drunk and in all kinds of chaos. And we had a very interesting childhood, and moved when I was about 5 to an Indian reservation 47 miles north of Las Vegas, out in the middle of the desert, in a low-income housing unit, when my dad got sent to prison for some of the abuse he was doing, and then spent age 5 to 10 on this Indian reservation with a single mother of 9 children who didn't know who she was, had lost her religion, had escaped one of the most twisted cults ever. And that was a whole nother interesting lifetime. And then when I was 10, she announced one day she was getting married, and we asked her to who, and it was to a polygamous man who had 3 other wives and 30-something kids in the town that we had escaped from. We had gotten our life to a good place, and she got sucked back in. And so from 10 to 14, I was back in that. The first 5 years, I never went to church, never nothing. We're just little ragged little shits running around with snot nose with mom and dad that were checked out and drunk and partying and whatever they were doing, and then beating the shit out of us here and there and all the other things. And so my main exposure to the religion was age 10 to 14, when they would require me to go to church and do Sunday school and all the things. So this is a fundamentalist Mormon background. So original Mormons were more fundamentalist, polygamy and all the things. In 1886, they split off and discontinued polygamy in the mainstream Mormon church, but there's sects of it in Mexico and across the country that still practice polygamy. And the one that's been most televised and had the most press is the one I was born in. And so when I was 14, I ran away from that, drove all the way to Phoenix, a 7-hour drive, no license, in an unlicensed vehicle, siphoning gas from strangers, and found my dad. And he was still an alcoholic asshole. Do we say these words here?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay. And so I was there for about a month and said, bag this shit, and called around. And my other older brother had been living on the streets for like a year to go to school in a town like 30 miles away because they'd kicked him out. And I called him and said, this shit sucks. He's like, hey, I can call around and see if I can find you a place. He found me a mainstream LDS family that lived in Springdale, Utah, at the base of Zion National Park, that had 12 of their own kids, just one mom and dad. And they took me in, and they had taken in mini strays like me over the years, somewhere around 10 or 12 probably. And so I had kind of a 20-person family there. So there's your what religious background and a little bit about the beginning few lifetimes.
Wow. That's so, I don't know if you know this, but I live in a town in Texas called San Angelo. And not far from San Angelo is this little town called El Dorado, which is
that where Warren Jeffs was set up his shit?
YFZ, all the guys that when they finally got tired of getting kicked around Utah and Arizona, they came to El Dorado, Texas, and built a compound there. And that's where one of my best friends was a locksmith, who was the one who opened up that compound when they invaded it to get all the kids out. And it was crazy. But of course, national news, they don't say El Dorado, Texas. It was always San Angelo, Texas. But they actually had his trial here in Tom Green County. And it was a damn circus. And I've been fascinated. I really have been fascinated by a lot of that, especially the fundamentalist side of Mormonism for a while. There's a lot of guys on YouTube doing interesting, I'm sure you're probably familiar with some of like the ex-Mormon stuff that I was going to say that happens, that goes on. But there's a lot of interesting content being made by former Mormons that shines a lot of light onto, and even on the non-fundamentalist side, kind of how controlling and screwed up, and it's
still has a lot of the same shit going on. It's a little less dense, but very similar.
Yeah. So, out of that, are you a practicing Mormon at all anymore? Are you a practicing anything anymore?
No religion, avid meditator. I spent 6 years traveling to the Amazon and studying and practicing with shaman. I spent 3 years with the Lakota tribe doing North American native traditions of ceremony and healing, plenty of plant medicines and ceremonial things of all different types. And then I've studied psychology, communication skills, body language, parenting, relationships, business, marketing. So I've been an avid student for a long, long time on many, many fronts, essentially just trying to get my shit sorted out.
What does meditation look like for you? Like, how do you access that and facilitate that in your own life?
So I've been meditating for off and on for 25 years. But for the first time I did meditation, I watched a documentary of a type of meditation called Vipassana. And it showed a max security prison in India where they had a 95% return rate. Anytime anyone got out, they end up, 95 out of 100 ended up back there. And they implemented this Vipassana meditation experience, and they put the prison out of business. And it showed live or recorded footage of these inmates. Now, I have a brother that served 17 years in prison, and I was visiting him the whole time, and it's a very intense environment. And so watching this, it was more hitting close to home because I watched the guys walk around in this energy, like, look at me wrong and I'll fucking kill you, right? And their whole body, their eyes, everything is saying that. And so watching this documentary, I'm seeing all these guys walking around like that, and they all sit down in a Vipassana meditation. The first time you do it is a 10-day thing. You take a vow of silence, you hand over your phone, you hand over your keys, you agree to not make any eye contact or any hand signals, to be completely internal for 10 days. That was my first real experience with meditation. And that's my style. I'm just extremist, dive head first to the hardest, weirdest, and most intense shit. So I watched this documentary. I'm so inspired by what happened. It showed at the end that several of these guys that had killed multiple people devoted the rest of their lives to providing money for the wives and children of the men that they had killed and things like that. And it inspired me. So I signed up and went out to Texas and did my first one of those. And 3 days in, I have this spiritual experience that I've talked to countless people since then. And they're like, fuck you, 3 days and you reach samadhi state. I've been meditating twice or 3 times a day for 16 years and I still haven't experienced it. I'm like, I don't know, it just happened. And so that was all about scanning body sensations and all kind, stillness. And we would meditate from like 5 a.m. till 8 or 9 at night, with breakfast, lunch, and dinner breaks and a 15-minute break in between meals. But it was like 100 people in a room meditating 10 or 12 hours a day, whatever that was, or more than 12. And it was profound. And then I left there and I didn't maintain a practice. And then, have you guys ever heard of Wake Up Warrior? So me and another guy founded a movement called Wake Up Warrior. I'm no longer partners with them. We haven't been partners for a long time, since like 2014 or something. But it's served probably tens of thousands of men now. And it's helping men to meditate and exercise and date their wife and journal and just a handful of habits that help them get their shit together. And we've been doing work like that forever. So when we did that, I started meditating regularly. I attended a few more different type of meditation retreats called Ascension Meditation, which is an evolution of transcendental meditation. And that's essentially using a mantra. Instead of your mind wandering randomly to all your thoughts, you repeat a statement in your mind over and over to begin to hone your focus where your internal attention goes, where you direct it. And ideally, it's a positive statement that starts to help you shift your state of being. And I really loved that and decided, fuck all that harder meditation stuff, and did that pretty diligently for several years. And then I faded out again. And then I would just meditate here and there, but not get a lot out of it. And then I was going through a really hard time, going through a divorce. In that bio, just so you know, I'm going through a divorce again with the same woman. And so very passionate about healthy relationships and families and all the things, and still haven't created the result that I want there. But so while I was going through this 2-3 years ago, it was fucking intense. And I was studying some works by Michael Singer and Joe Dispenza and Yogananda and different people. And some shit clicked in me something clicked in me in getting to the root of all the stuff I hadn't gotten to yet that was still causing me havoc in my life. And so I decided I'm not going to fight this woman anymore. No matter what the fuck she does, I'm going to let her know, hey, I'm going to take space. I don't want to fight you. I'm going to step in the other room. I'm going to meditate, get my shit right, and then I'll be back. And I started doing that reliably. And then she would throw daggers as I'm walking away. And then even when I was meditating, she'd come in and start bitching at me, trying to tell me, like, you're just going to meditate? And I'd just stay in it. And it became the greatest blessing in my life. When I was sharing about this live on Facebook and social platforms, I was calling it the holy grail of anything I'd ever discovered in 30 years of personal development and personal, self-discovery. Because it began to take all the havoc that was happening in my head. So first would come all the big fucking emotions, and then would come the shit storm of thoughts, and then they would cycle back and forth. And as I began to this new meditation style, I was combining observing my breath with repeating a mantra and having the first half of the mantra be on the in-breath and the second half of the mantra be on the out-breath. And somehow that combination brought me to some amazing places where I started to heal my deepest wounds and be filled with the greatest amount of confidence and love and clarity and inspiration and stillness and peace in the midst of a fucking shit show of my relationship. So background on that, my wife has been physically ill with excruciating, worse than childbirth pain for 12 years straight. No sleep at night, maybe 1 to 2 hours on average, typically, and 23 hours a day of living hell. And through that, we used to have the most amazing relationship in ever. And through that, her mental health has declined to the point of verge of suicide for many years now. And I finally couldn't take any more and called it off a couple of months ago. And even more healings happening since then. But this meditation was critical and key for me to survive the last few years, because no matter what the fuck was coming at me, every day, all day, I found a peace and a stillness and a confidence and the ability to stop reacting and start responding.
That's a lot to take in. It kind of reminds the last meditation you're talking about kind of reminds me of Thich Nhat Hanh and some of the meditations that he would describe, because he had meditations where there was part of the meditation was on an in breath and part of the meditation is on an out breath, right? I breathe in this and I breathe out that. I breathe in this and I breathe out that. So it reminds me a lot of that. Have you read much of his writings?
I haven't. The other things I've read have referenced it, but I haven't read any of it.
Yeah.
But there has been, for me, I discovered only about a year ago that I have ADHD. I had no idea this whole time. I actually had a couple of clients at the same time pay me to be a part of my men's group, and they were some of the hardest clients I'd ever had. And I discovered they had ADHD, and that my normal style, because I'm pretty blunt and intense and direct, and if I gave that to them, they would completely shut down, go into like a wounded father type, fuck you, I'm a rebel, don't tell me what to do, and no, I won't be disciplined in doing my daily habits. And so I started studying intensely everything to do with ADHD and how to relate with people that had it. And I was able to turn that around and bless the hell out of their lives. But in it, I discovered, shit, I have ADHD too. I've just learned coping mechanisms over the years. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I bring that up for the point of when I would just do a mantra, it wasn't enough to keep my mind occupied because my mind processes a million miles like. And so later over time, I've been able to develop holding focal where I'm focusing on like 6 to 8 things at a time sometimes, and being able to hold all of them. Like I could hear the Om in my ears. I can focus on my third eye. I can suck my stomach in. I can pull up my perineum. I can observe my breath. I can repeat a mantra. I can do all these things all at once when I'm dialed. But when in the beginning, I could only do the one thing. But when I discovered this connection with the breath, it was just enough multitasking where my brain had to focus on both observing the breath and repeating the mantra, that it did something for my ADHD where I was finally able to start accessing things where it wasn't like, well, I sat there and listened to my brain go fucking crazy, but I don't really feel any benefit, even though everyone says meditation's such a good thing. Like for almost 2 decades, it was like, and everyone says it's amazing, but I'm not feeling it. And when I got this combo, it just started dropping me out where I would be. It was like medicine journeys, or like the head will go completely silent. Nothing was happening. Oftentimes I would forget who I was and be in some other realm and being filled with bliss and love and clarity and peace. And that's when it was like, holy fuck, like I'm going here over and over, whatever it takes.
Sounds amazing. I want to do that. So
yeah, really.
Does it come in pill form? Let's just go there.
If it did, Big Pharma would patent the motherfucker. You'd be paying him big money for a long time.
You're like, well, it's called, we call this transcendental meditation in a pill.
Right.
Also a lot like ecstasy.
And then it'd be outlawed unless prescribed by a doctor.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Laced with fentanyl on the street. I'm just, you know what? That's not even a funny. That just got dark. I apologize for that. It was funny because I was watching, just scrolling through Facebook, and I saw this little clip of a stand-up comedian who had ADHD and said the first time she tried cocaine, it was the first time in her life she'd been like chill. Like she's like, because, a lot of times those kinds of like caffeine. I remember having students in high school whose part of their learning plan was, if they were like, they started to get a little restless or whatever, they were supposed to have half a Coke because the things that would make other. What's that? Is it a cola?
Coca-Cola.
Is it half a Coca-Cola?
Half of a Coca-Cola, the beverage.
Not half a line of Coke.
Most of those kids already had that in them. But because with ADHD people, a lot of times, obviously the effects of certain things are reversed. So caffeine would make them jittery. It would help them focus. It would. And apparently this person, I don't know, please don't quote me, listeners, that cocaine will focus you if you have ADHD. It probably won't. And even if it did, I'm not so sure it's the best approach. But I wonder if that's like if people who have who have issues with that, like you said, might have had to find a roundabout way into meditation. Maybe the normal channels it might have found that very frustrating and difficult. Like, how do I focus my mind when I have such a hard time?
Everyone I've worked with, so I developed a challenge called the Warrior 44 Challenge based on the work of Carl Jung, where the part of his work where he talked about the 4 masculine archetypes of the lover, or the warrior, the lover, the magician, and the king. And when I got deep into these meditations, I started receiving all kinds of insights and experiences around those 4 archetypes, and realized that there are rites of passage. So every culture in the world, indigenous cultures, had rites of passage to go from a boy to a man. And ours are pretty jacked. Like, if you're in a gang in a rough inner city, then go kill a Marine or whatever, right? Different ones like that, or waterboard somebody into a college frat, or play football. But I studied for like 6 years all kinds of rites of passage of indigenous cultures that include, getting bit by bullet ants that feels like getting shot in the hand with a gun, and all kinds of other things that they would do. And I became fascinated because one of the weaknesses of me that caused a lot of my relationship challenge was having nice guy syndrome, not being dependable and reliable, not being able to keep my word, no matter how hard I willed, just falling back into old patterns. And so to kick that, I decided to do an Ironman. I was like, I hate swimming. My knees hurt, or I don't know how to swim very good. My knees hurt. I've never cycled, and I hate running. But hey, I'm ready to break through this shit. So I paid money, didn't have any gear, didn't have a bike. I had a 16-year-old mountain bike. And I started training for this Ironman. And I learned a thing about myself. When I wanted myself to follow through, I learned the burn the ships model. And I've been coaching for almost 20 years now online, and social media is my primary marketing. And so a way I burn the ships when I'm going to take on something big like that is to post online something like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Hold me to it. If I don't follow through and you're a client of mine, fire me and quit paying me. And if you've ever considered being a client of mine, don't hire me. Because if I can't do what I say I'm going to do, how the fuck am I going to help you do that? And so I've used that quite a few times to push my ass through shit that seemed too damn impossible. I signed up for this Ironman, and I trained for a couple of years, and I finished a full Ironman. And through that, I learned it was a rite of passage. I learned major mental discipline and mind over body and all the different things. Mind over matter, I guess they say. But then as I've been exploring, there's this inner world. So have you guys heard of the 75 Hard Challenge?
No.
A guy put out a 75 Hard Challenge. I don't remember it exactly, but it's 75 days, 2 workouts a day, 45 minutes a piece of workouts. One of those workouts has to be outdoors. It can just be a walk if you want. Drink at least a gallon of water, read at least 5 pages of a book.
Oh, yeah.
Do a little meditation, something like that.
Yeah, actually, I have heard it. My daughter and her husband have both done it.
Yeah.
We're going to try to do that once too.
The guy that launched that went through the Wake Up Warrior program that me and my partner, and then he took what we taught him and launched 75 Hard, went viral, and has become a huge success. It's a good thing. I've done that multiple times, but later I discovered there's an inner so going back to those archetypes and the rites of passage, there's a rites of passage in the warrior. So we tend to think of warrior as, a soldier or an alpha male or a badass man who puffs out his chest and tries to establish dominance or whatever. There's many frames of a warrior. And if you get to the more refined aspects, it's like this guy has dignity, he has honor, he has impeccable integrity, he has follow through, he has mental discipline, he has all the factors that bring in the highest level of integrity and alignment as a man. And the same applies in a woman too. And in the lover, I discovered, you might think of that, what's the lover rite of passage? Lover rite of passage is what started happening. What I realized is when I used the warrior energy to discipline my mind to become still and focus where I told it to instead of wandering aimlessly. And that took a lot of effort for a long time. That when I would get to that stillness and stay there, at some point, everything would melt and relax, and I would feel that love and peace that I'm talking about. And that's where the lover rite of passage comes in, is the love of what I would say the divine, or whatever you want to call it. I have no definition for God other than everything, everywhere, all at once, maybe, like the movie. But there's something that happens in that stillness. If you can use your will to discipline your focus and awareness and attention enough times over a long enough period of time, the brain finally sits down like a dog that you said, sit and stay. And you trained it that when you say sit and stay, that means stay till I say you can get up and go. And so if that means hours, so be it, right? That's what happens. So the mind goes, okay, cool, vacation. At first it's like, no, ego, I must keep control. And after a while, it's like, this fucker is not playing around. Fine, I'll just rest. And it shuts off. And shortly after that comes in this absolute love and peace that I've felt on the backside of medicine journeys. Like usually if I did a medicine journey, it's hell in the beginning and heaven in the end. Well, that's how the meditation was. And this heaven comes in, like the absolute wholeness, peace, joy, love. No problems exist. There is no stressor in the world. If you stay there long enough and repeat that long enough, so you've now gone through the initiation from the warrior. The initiation into the warrior was the discipline to do the practice until you got to that stillness deep enough to feel that love. Then you do that long enough over an extended period of time, and you start to move into what Carl Jung called the magician. But when I wrote the book about all this in the Atma male, I changed the name of the magician to the alchemist. Because a magician can be a guy with smoke and mirrors and tricks. And if you know the trick, it's not that special. But an alchemist turns lead to gold. An alchemist turns the pain in my heart and my body and my mind into, coal into diamonds. It turns bad situations into good situations. For instance, in this divorce, my wife got fucking vile for a minute. And I decided, let me practice this alchemy thing. And so what I would do is I wouldn't respond to her till I got completely in a place of love and peace and joy and clarity. And then I would only speak back to her. I would acknowledge what she said, validate what she was experiencing, offer her no resistance or fight, and then speak into back. The only thing I would speak back is, hey, I hear you. I understand. I empathize. I know I can see why you're feeling the way you're feeling, and I can honor that. And I just want to speak to that once we get through this, we're going to be in peace and harmony and choose what's best for the kids and work together. We're not going to be enemies. Everything's going to be smooth and flowing, and everyone's going to be safe. And that's all I would say. I wouldn't tell her my feelings. I wouldn't tell her my triggers and my reactions and tell her what she was fucking up on. I would just receive everything she wanted to send, which a divine masculine trait would be like a willow tree. You have the roots deeply solid with a tough trunk and wavy branches that can weather that storm without reacting. And this is the key to go from the lover to the alchemist is shifting from reaction to response, right? That I get rooted enough in the truth of who I am as the greatest version of me, that the only thing you're going to get back from me is the best version of me, not the worst. And when you trigger the worst in me, I'm going to do what it takes to get back to the best of me. If that takes hours, weeks, days, minutes, I'm not fucking talking until that's handled, because it just keeps cycling the same fucking patterns. But by shifting from reaction to response, you now have been initiated into the alchemist. And no matter what, if life sends you lemons, you make lemonade. Whatever it sends at you, you can turn the whole thing around without manipulation or force or control. It's just receiving whatever comes, not taking it personal, runs off like a duck on water on a duck's back, and then plant back into the conversation the highest outcome you can perceive for all. That's where the alchemy takes place. And in the last one, he called the king. Carl Jung called the last one the king. And I was like, well, there's a lot of connotation around king. There's been tyrants. There's been all kinds of men that call themselves kings that I don't experience to be noble kings. And all kinds of history with the word king. So I was wondering, I want to use a different word. And I was living in Costa Rica last winter. I was in my swimming pool and I was listening to a book and I was having a conversation, and this word Atma came up and something said, hey, that's it. And I looked it up and it said higher self. And that's everything I'd been practicing to be able to navigate this shit show with my wife. And I was like, that's it. And so it's warrior. In my book, it's warrior, lover, alchemist, Atma. With the intent that, hey, I'm not just going to teach you how to be a macho man, or I'm not going to teach you how to be, because my journey included going into the New Age movement, replacing religion with New Age shit, spending years in that and fucking up a lot of things, finding all the distortions and miscues and just the rebranding of a lot of the same shit. And then I can't remember the thread I was going down there, but essentially, if I tie it back to go back to the Atma concept, it was, instead of the surface level shit, I went too feminine when I went into New Age. I went soft and femmy and lost polarity and lost assertiveness and became too passive. And so I went from this farm boy, roughneck, emotionally unintelligent guy to this extremely emotionally intelligent, but too damn soft, to pendulum swinging back and forth to come closer and closer to a balance. And so rather than just part of the reason why me and that partner split with the Wake Up Warrior was it was still about the surface level shit. You're going to get the Lambo, you're going to get the hot wife, you're going to make the money and whatever. And I love all those things. But for me, it was always become the very fucking greatest version of myself to the highest level possible, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, financially, relationally. And I've been avidly diving into that for several decades now. And so the Atma is my version of the king. Like, how do we make you the greatest version of you?
It seems like you'd be in a state of more freedom for yourself when you're seeking the greatest version of yourself instead of seeking the hot wife and the Lambo and everything. It's almost like there's a surrender that happens to, instead of goals that you're trying to get outside of yourself, the goal is inside of yourself, which seems really freeing.
And it's, if you go into, so the New Age has plenty of truth in it. And you can actually start, as you study it deeper, you can see science. It works just like science. Like when they talk about the law of attraction or manifestation, there's a whole bunch of horse shit out there that's not helpful. But if you look at electricity, energy, and magnetism, there's direct correlations with the thoughts being the energy that you send out, or the electrical energy that you send out, and the feelings. So if I say, this is what I choose, and I focus on this is what I'm choosing to create, but then I embody the state, I figure out how to feel how I believe that I will feel after I get that thing. So they think, oh man, once I get X amount of dollars, I can just relax and enjoy life and start to play and have fun and travel the world. And once I get that hot wife, I'll finally feel loved and peaceful and whole and fulfilled. And once I get those kids, and once I get that Lambo and show them that I'm a success, all of this is founded in insecurity and trying to fill a void with external things that can never. And religion has truth in it. Like when they talk about don't build on a sandy foundation, that's fucking true. What is a sandy foundation? Anything outside of you that can be taken away. So if my well-being is based on my wife not leaving me, like 10 years ago, if I was only 2 months out of a divorce, I wouldn't be on this call. I'd mess you guys and say, hey guys, I'm a fucking wreck. I got a divorce, can't be on. And I'm here thriving, right? I'm going through ups and downs and having big emotions, but I be with them, and I know how to navigate them now. But it's when you find that level of peace on the inside that's not contingent on a relationship, anything. Your kids could die. Your kids could become teenagers and hate you like my first two daughters did for a long time, right? Like anything can be taken away from you that's outside of you. The only thing they can never take away is right here, in here. And so if you don't do this work, then you're in a codependent relationship with life. Every time it don't fit your picture, you react, you're miserable until you get what you want. You're just a child throwing a tantrum. And so there's no greater, but the flip side of it is when you go in at that depth, it all starts coming to you. You don't have to go hunting anymore. It's more like what the natives would take these branches, small branches, and weave them together, and the fish swim in, and they just pull it up, and they have a bunch of fish, right? When you get what this whole thing brings to you, the money just comes, and the clients just come, and the relation, if whatever it is that is aligned, just comes. The people that that are dramatic and cause problems, they just exit your world, and the people that are fucking awesome come in, and all the opportunities the same.
I love all this. It is fascinating to me. I love your book. I feel like your book was impactful in many ways. I know it wasn't written for me as a woman. It was definitely written towards a male audience, but I think a lot of it needs to be heard wider, especially given the fact that there is like a fight against masculinity in a lot of ways in our culture. And the more that we can uphold those things, not as something to be feared or, and also recognizing that masculinity and dominance isn't the same thing, where a lot of times those do overlap in people's minds, and they try to get away from it. The thing that I was curious about, you talked about this rite of passage that you didn't, I don't know if you were able to experience for yourself as a teenager. I know for women, for girls, we go from girls to women through a period. And so that almost feels like that menstrual cycle feels like a rite of passage in some ways. But for boys, they don't really have it. And last year we had my son go to a wilderness therapy program for various reasons. But he was out in the wilderness in Utah and Colorado for 3 months. And I mean, he really had to go from being a boy to being a man in many ways, learning how to like survive in a wilderness setting. I haven't gotten through your whole book yet, but I'm wondering, do you have much that translates from this male masculinity rite of passage, like anything to give towards teenage boys? Any kind of like wisdom to share with that?
Yeah. So first, let's address the woman thing. I don't know if I'll write another book for women or one that's for both, but since writing the book, I've discovered that all the same principles apply to a woman as well. If she don't, like you see these new age women that call themselves goddesses and put period blood on their faces and post pictures of it on Facebook and all the shit. They usually have a deep wound with a father or some male, and everything to do with discipline and responsibility, they've thrown out with the bathwater, the baby out with the bathwater. And so the warrior rite of passage for any woman who can't reliably follow through with her word and be responsible, she still gets to keep that feminine flow. But if she don't have the banks, like a Florida marshland has no banks and it becomes a mossy swamp. The Grand Canyon has some really solid banks, and there's adventure and power to be had there. And so everything in the Atma male that I wrote for men, we've been having women go through. I created a challenge called the Warrior 44 Challenge to take people through that first rite of passage. And I opened up the group to women, and we're having as many breakthroughs, if not more, with women at an extremely high level just going through the free Warrior 44 Challenge. So that off the table. To break down and make it simple, the principle of rites of passage is the simplest version would be get out of your comfort zone as many times and ways as possible over and over and over for the rest of your life. And some of those are small stretches and some of those are big stretches. But ultimately, the goal is that you become not scared of anything. You know you can fucking face anything, anytime, anywhere, including death, and be okay with it and show up in a way that you can respond rather than react, because the only power is right now in this moment in a response from who I really am, not from my trauma reactions and triggers. And so the basic principle would be something like, pick something that they would love to do that they're scared to do. Like if they like fighting, cool, sign up for an amateur MMA fight and train for it. If they wanted to bodybuild, sign up for a bodybuilding contest and train for it and finish it. It don't matter if you fucking win. It matters that you committed, you did the process, and you showed up on the stage. Anything that feels like an impossible goal, like this thing that I want, but I don't believe in myself enough to do it, or I'm scared shitless. If they wanted to be an entrepreneur, but they're scared of the risk, do it, right? Like anything, that's really what it is. And there's not just there's infinite rites of passage. If you want to be the most empowered motherfucker around, you face every fucking thing you've ever been scared of until there's nothing left to be scared of. But you do it in bite-sized chunks, one at a time, one at a time, one at a time. And at the end goal is that you are 100% you, no matter who's looking, and no matter what they think, feel, say, or do, that you're just you. No shame, no guilt, no inhibitions. Like, here I am. Still consideration for your impact on others. Like, I'm not going to get on here and start tearing people down, but I'm just going to be me. Tell you all my history, all my fuck ups, all my weaknesses. Here I am. Here's my soft side, my rough side, my intense side. Here I am. Take it or leave it. Right? That's the goal.
I'm curious, John and Nat, have you guys ever been able to do that sort of work where like you have an impossible goal? Like, I'm wondering, both of you are authors. Both of you had to write books that like from start to finish. And Christopher, you obviously wrote a book as well. Like, did that feel like an impossible goal for you that you worked on and finished and published and got out there? Or was it something that came easy for you?
No, it was hard as hell and scary. So you know what I did? I hired a woman. No, that is the truth. I would have hired.
You guys hired the same person.
Yeah, I hired a coach. I did. In essence, what you talk about doing with the Iron Man, where you put it out there and you like burn the bridge or burn the ship. Yeah. I paid this woman a lot of money and said, "Well, now you're going to fucking write the book because." Yep. The cheap ass in me is not going to go. I needed that. Yep. I needed that accountability. I needed that drive that I was not able to somehow manufacture in myself. And actually, it turned out about halfway through the process, I didn't need her. She was fantastic, and I love her. Meg, if you're listening, that doesn't mean I didn't need you. But she would tell you her biggest role in that process was helping me figure out how to get out of my own way, helping me figure out what trauma responses I was dealing with that were leading to writer's block, which I always, I have writer's block. No, you don't. You're having a trauma response to something. And you have spent 50 years of your life not knowing how to navigate those things. And so you shut down, which turns into writer's block. So she was equal parts psychologist, motivator. She helped me almost not at all with the writing. I would send her stuff and she'd go, "Yeah, that's good." I'm like, wait a minute. but yeah, so that was a rite of passage. I didn't think of it that way at the time. Later on I did, but what you said about rites of passage, I started thinking about this about 10 or 15 years ago, because I was starting to look into a lot of indigenous cultures and there was that jealousy almost in me of like, man, they have these things. There are these markers that you go, hey, when in this tribe, when you reach this age, you get these tattoos. You go through this process, you get these scars, you get this experience. Maybe if you're Greek, they throw you to the wolves to see if you survive. No, I'm kidding. But it wasn't, we've stripped all that away in Western culture. I think women, like Bethany's point is well taken. I guess you can't take that from women. So there is at least that biological marker that says, even though we still tend to infantilize women until they're sometimes pastors of small churches and they still get treated, right? Am I right? There was no. I know we've talked about this a couple of weeks in a row now, but that comment that parishioner made to you was condescending and infantilizing. We still do that to women, and I think we still do that to men. I mean, so what's interesting is that a lot of what I hear you say about masculinity, absolutely across the board, just sort of applies to humanity. How do we navigate these roles? How do we do these things? And I like the idea of trying to mark that. But John, I've stepped all over your possible response to what your experience was like that.
I mean, I have a similar, but I didn't hire a writing coach. Instead, I put it out there that I would write a blog every week.
True,
and I put myself in a position where I had to write, because come Monday, there damn well better be something that's going to go on the screen.
We're all three of those people going to call you.
I know.
Awesome.
But so I did that, and I did that for 52 weeks.
Yeah.
Without fail. And then at 52 weeks, I had a book. And in the back of my mind, there was times where I was like, and you're kind of, you're joking when you say the three people might get mad, but there were times where that's exactly what I thought. There's only like 2 or 3 people really reading this.
Well, you start to rationalize, right?
Really,
well, what if I didn't do this? What's the
if I didn't do it once a week, I mean, am I really affecting anybody?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is anybody? But at the core of it, who am I affecting? I'm affecting myself.
Yes.
Right, because I've set a challenge for myself, and I damn well better finish it.
Yes.
And so, I mean, I never really thought of it as a rite of passage. I didn't. But to go from I'm scared to death of writing because I don't think I have anything to say to I have a published book. That's pretty remarkable.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Real quick, Bethany, on the woman having a period. When I was with the Lakota tribe, once a year, I would go vision questing and do all the sweat lodges and did some peyote and the different things. But any girl who had had a period, started her period within the last year, the grandmothers and the women would gather in a separate experience for like a day or a half a day. And there was a whole process and ceremony where they welcomed her and celebrated her. And so over the years working with women, I've heard some of the most atrocious stories of what that rite of passage and seeing what it could be and what it has been. Everything from, well, no one had ever talked to me about it. And I had felt shameful as hell about my vagina. And I was at school and I started my period and right? Or my dad, whatever, that's gross. Or there's the amount of stories I've heard about it is just heartbreaking of how many women, girls went to womanhood in a way that was just like, wow. And then to see this, they teach them all these lessons and it's so loving and nurturing and celebrated as if wonderful. And then they bring the whole community in together and they have a man take a buffalo skull with the fur still on it and do this playful little bumping into them, representing the challenges they'll run into in life. And everyone's gathered around and they're witnessed as, hey, welcome to womanhood, right? And so even what we're doing in Western culture for a woman isn't even fucking close to what it could be.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And I think that depending on how you are raised and the culture that you're raised in, you're right. There's like this great amount of shame. I was in the locker room at my gym yesterday and a couple of women were like complaining about their periods. And then another woman started complaining about her menopause and perimenopause. And everybody had this like super negativity about all of it, which makes sense. I mean, none of it is easy. It's a pain in the ass. It's terrible. I get it. But also there's something like if we can change our perspective on it and have like come about it with a sense of gratitude and awe and like just so happy about the way our bodies work as women, the start of something and the ending of something, the life and death that's happening every month in our bodies, this death and resurrection essentially that's happening in our bodies every single month. And this is something to celebrate and be be excited about, even though it is not this easy thing and it comes with a certain amount of discomfort and pain and frustration, all the things that happen within those cycles. But still, I think perspective shifts are so important. And I think even that perspective shift within that experience can change the physicality of that experience itself within our bodies that month and that year and then throughout the years.
It's huge. I mean, if women, in other countries, they have like this afternoon nap, right? Like a break off of work. I went to Germany a couple months ago, and from whatever it was, 2 to 3 or 1 to 2 or 3 or whatever it was, everything shuts down and everyone goes and takes a break, and it's just normal. Where here it's like round the clock, 24/7, go as fast and hard as you can. I think one of the greatest things we could implement would be women, like first 2 days of your period, don't do anything that's not fucking amazing, nurturing, relaxing, massage, bubble bath, snuggled up, movies, sipping a drink, like whatever the thing is, like that's one of the greatest things we could do, where they're not just powering through another fucking day where now I'm dealing with this stuff. If they just took that time to go internal and nourish and love on themselves and nurture themselves, it would change so much.
Yeah, but you have to have a society that's willing to adapt to that. And we just don't have that.
Exactly.
I mean, we have our family members and our friends and everybody around us saying, you got to keep moving. You got to keep doing, what are you doing? Taking the day off and, just take some Midol and you'll be fine. And it's man, if we just had more grace for each other. And I mean, the same goes for men. I mean, I think if we could have more grace for each other within each other's genders and sexes would be really amazing.
For those who own their own business, I've set myself up that once a month, and I'm not majorly into horoscopes, but I learned this advanced technique for improving my evolution. And that's about as simple as I can put it for now. But once a month, when the moon is in my sun sign, I'm a Cancer. So every time the moon's in Cancer, which is average 2.5, 3 days a month in every sign, I fast for 3 days. And I go internal and I don't schedule shit on those days. And I meditate and I walk in nature and I fast and I dedicate those 3 days for me, because the authenticity, that level of fully expressing yourself as your true self is really the primary goal of all this, that you are your song is sung, your dance is danced, and you're all of you, and you're no longer living your life based off what anyone else fucking thinks, says, or does. That's the end goal for me and the people I work with. Now, in that, what gets you there? Self-love. Deeply integrated, embodied self-love. Not the surface level shit, not just the words, the actual embodiment of it. And that comes through impeccable integrity and healing wounds and traumas and having these meditation, all kinds of things get you there. But because outside, if I had a job, that's almost impossible to take 3 days off. If I have a business and I value myself enough and I'm committed enough, that in itself can be a rite of passage. I fucking set aside 3 days a month for myself. I'll handle the things I need to handle with the kids and whatever else. It's not 100%. If it was 100, I would literally go sit, because I've done dark retreat in the past where they put you in a room for 5 days in utter darkness and all alone, and you meditate the whole time, and it's fucking amazing. People think it sounds like solitary confinement, but when you have the ability to go to these places, it's heaven on earth. And if I had my dream world, I would have my own dark room, and once a month I'd go in there for 3 days. But I'm not there yet. I will get there. Right now, I do have those 3 days, and it's 90% freed up to where I create it so that it is so.
Well, and it's amazing how even in that is a perspective shift in of itself. It's like you have to have a different paradigm in that, where some people will look at fasting as some sort of a form of discipline, a form of they're mad at themselves, or they're trying to they feel like they're pieces of shit who just need to lose weight or whatever, and so they come into it with this like negativity. But when you come into it with this form of self-love, then the whole thing is nurturing.
Completely.
The whole thing is like, oh, I can focus on what my body needs. I can focus on what my mind needs.
Yes.
If you're a person of faith, you can focus on your relationship with God, deepening that perspective. I don't know, that's really beautiful. I love that you like connect it to the zodiac signs and or the Cancer moon and everything. I've never thought of doing it like that. I'm also a Cancer, and so I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
There's a particular reason for that. The short answer, if you go back to religious texts, they talk about going north to the land of milk and honey. And then they show a picture of Jesus hanging on the cross, and they show his cross hanging up here, and they show two thieves lower. Well, if you go to the third eye and the two thieves, and you have the pineal gland and the pituitary gland, one of those produces a milky substance, and one of them produces a honey substance. From the day you are born, every 28 days, just like a woman's cycle, there's a fluid that excretes from one of those glands, goes down through your cerebral spinal fluid, and goes back up and enters the other gland for 2.5 days, just like Jesus was in the tomb. And there's 33 vertebrae in your spine, and there's lower 5 are not connected to any, they're fused differently. And you have 5 senses that take you away and distract you from going within. It's taste, smell, touch, whatever those things are, hearing, sound, whatever. It goes through 33 vertebrae. The lowest 5 or the lower 5 senses represent the lower 5 senses. It cycles back up and enters this other gland. And if you, in that 2.5 to 3 days, you go, I call it my tomb time. That's how it's blocked out of my schedule. They call it something else. They have all these fancy words. I don't, just tomb time. So on those 2 days, I'm like, hey, this is my time to go within, just like you have this 28-day cycle. What did you call it? Beginnings and endings, birth and resurrection, or death and resurrection?
Yeah, death and resurrection.
Death and resurrection, same shit. Right? I go into the darkness, I go into the stillness, I go within, let everything that's taken place in the last month clear out, and connect with the next highest version of myself, and then start fresh and new. Like even the scriptures, I don't study scriptures, but something like, I've heard it a million ways from all different theologies of, you must die into yourself over and over, right? Die into yourself and be reborn while you're still alive, right? We have an opportunity to do that every day. And if you dedicate and allocate that time every month, instead of repeating the same fucking patterns over and over again, feeling like life is punishing you, you actually start to be at choice more and more, and having a more and more easeful and enjoyable time.
I mean, there's something to be said for those cycles. You don't have to buy off on all the astrological significance of all that, but there's something about circadian rhythms, right? There's rhythms of life. There's these biological imperatives in us that so much of modern life. I'm a business owner and I have a job, so I'm doubly fucked. So carving out that time for myself, that's difficult.
Yeah.
That's difficult because the again, that imperative comes in that says, people depend on me. This business has to succeed. I've got to invested in it. This job has to go well. I need a paycheck. And so
it goes against survival instincts. It goes against protector instincts.
Right?
It goes against what as providers and protectors. That's one of the other things I've done to screw up my marriage is I haven't known how to play. I haven't known how to relax. I haven't known how to not just be like, okay, let me work. Let me help you with the house. Let me help you with the kids. Let me serve, not take care of me, not have any time. What the fuck? You think I'm going to take 3 days off? Like that took a long process to get committed to that.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's something that I think if we were more intentional, even in our religion, even in our practice of our faith, we would find, as a Christian, guess what? There's something in that notion of a Sabbath. Not for religious reasons. Jesus was very clear about this wasn't to fulfill a religious obligation. You weren't made for the Sabbath. The Sabbath's made for you. This was an idea that I think is biologically, probably at a cellular level, is necessary for us to not kill ourselves before we reach the age of, say, 30.
Yeah. And then there's all kinds of science around the fasting. One, it helps me open up and go so much deeper in the meditations. It helps me come to stillness and peace and feel that love. And receive all the inspirations and then scientifically look at it from a biological level. Stem cells and all kinds of other stuff is happening to regenerate cells and all those things. And then the only tie to I literally never look up astrology. It's not an interest of mine. The reason why it's significant to that is when the moon is in your sun sign, it is the exact 28-day cycle from the day you were born. Right? So it's counted from the day. So that way I don't have to go, okay, 28 days for the last 48 years. When's my time? I can actually know that time by simply tracking that.
See? That's helpful. I like it. I tell you what, man, all of this is really fascinating. The name of the book, again, is I was saying Atma. What is the etymology of that word, by the way? Atma. I was trying to figure out where that had come from.
So it's like tied to Hinduism. It's got some Buddhist ties, Eastern theology or philosophy or whatever, spirituality. Atman. What do we find? There was a few different versions. Atma, Atman, and it seemed like there was one more. We considered making it Atman or Atma, and there was a slight variation in the two, but essentially the same thing. But Atma is like your highest self aligned with your soul. If we talk about higher heart, higher mind, lower mind, higher self, lower self, higher senses, lower senses, as you reach higher states of consciousness and embodiment, you begin to get more senses than just the five senses, like clairsentience and clairvoyance and all these other things where you start to get access to other senses. And so I've had a lot of those activated over the years, and they're really cool to work with. But yeah, that's some of the.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Well, and obviously the obvious sort of play on words helps out with the, because,
right.
The alpha male, Atma male. I like that.
Right.
So this, again, the book is called The Atma Male, An Ancient Model of Success in a Postmodern World. It is out now. You should probably go buy a copy for yourself and all the men / women / boys / girls in your life. If nothing else, just be prepared to be challenged. I think that's the whole point, is to help us ask good questions and dive a little deeper into some of these concepts. So, man, I tell you what, I really, really enjoyed hanging out and talking with you, man. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. You guys have any parting shots before we say goodbye?
Nope. I think, just thank you for speaking with us. It's been a great time.
Yeah. And thanks for being vulnerable too, sharing your story in the way that you did. I mean, I know that you say that this is just who you are, you share all the time, and that's awesome. But it just felt like we got to know you in a deeper way. So really appreciate that.
I really enjoyed every single one of you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to This Is Not Church. Be sure to rate and review the podcast on your platform of choice. If you would like to partner with us, visit patreon.com/thisisnotchurch, where you will receive exclusive content such as early access to episodes, videos of upcoming episodes, and live Q&A sessions. Be sure to check out our Facebook group or follow us on Twitter and Instagram. All the links are in the show notes. We'll be back soon with another episode.